When historians speak of the common warrior that were seen on the medieval battlefield, most of the time they would speak of the English and their levies of infantry and longbowmen, or the Scots with their pike formations, mainly speaking of levy units. However, the everyday Irish warrior are a different story entirely. These would be the Irish Kerns. The Kerns were not levy units, but in such were free men who in which could afford arms and armor identical to a knight. However, Irish Kerns preferred to fight with little to no armor, and such Irish Kerns would fight in the mix of Irish men-at-arms. Accounts describe Irish Kerns either fighting on foot or even mounted cavalry. The Anglo-Irish would describe that while fighting the Irish, they stated that these warriors were quick and light on foot and on horseback, as when attacking the enemy, they would strike from one end and quickly attack from the other within a matter of a second, soon after the first charge. Short tunics and trousers would be worn in order to allow the wearer to be more lighter on the field of battle. As accounts describe, tunics reaching as far down to the mid-thigh or to that of the knees. In such would have been a mix of colors, but the most common color of which would be of that of the yellow dye, mainly because of how cheap the dye was, giving way to the Irish Kerns wearing the common yellow colors. In later history would be the color of war. Leggings were a common form of garment in which would be worn for everyday life. The leggings would be tied to a string that was attached to the trousers and would be tied below the knee to keep the trousers fabric close for a tighter feel. Irish Kerns would wear a mix of footwear. The Irish Kerns were more commonly known to have worn Gaelic-style footwear, commonly used in Ireland all the way into the 20th century. However, more than historical accounts describe Irish Kerns fighting in battle without any form of leggings or footwear, possibly because of the Irish landscape and terrain. Woven belts would be worn in order to identify friend from foe on the field of battle, as these were commonly worn all the way into the 20th century as a way to tell where a man was from. The colors on each of these belts would represent a man's coat of arms in which he was allegiance to. Historical accounts describe that Irish Kerns at this time wore little to no armor, as these Irish warriors preferred to fight lightly armed and armored, believing without armor they could move faster and feel less fatigue while in battle. In the 13th century, there are accounts that Irish Kerns would have fought with helmets. However, a lot of times Irish Kerns would prefer not to fight with a helmet at all, as in the early half of the 13th century, Irish kerns would wear a mix of nasal and skull cap and even bull helmets. Written accounts tell of Irish kerns wearing these helmets without any aventail or coif, mainly believing that it was easier to fight without such armor. The swords that were used were normally of a copy of that of the late Norman style swords, along with a mix of Norse Gael swords, as the pommel of these swords would be a mix of a round, oval, or Brazil nut pommel. It is highly believed that these swords were copied from the Anglo-Irish in the previous late 12th century. Accounts of long daggers or skins would be used on the field of battle. These would be of a single-edged blade, with a blade length somewhere between 12 to 14 inches, and which would be used by the shield arm, allowing the user to fight with two forms of weapons. It is highly believed that the dagger would be used to catch an opponent's blade, or in which, if it was up close and personal, the Irish kern could use the weapon to stab or slit the person's throat. The shields that were used were commonly that of the strapped-on design shield, identical to that of the Scottish Targe. The accounts state that these would either be made of a wicker and hide design, or of that of an overlapping sheets of wood and leather. But the most common design of shield that was used by the Irish kern at the time was of that of the buckler shield, as it was a shield that was both perfect for defensive and offensive purposes, making the kern lighter on the field of battle. The Irish kern would use a form of axe as a form of a backup weapon if they had lost their sword or lost some other weapon in battle. It is stated though that these type of axes were of a one-handed use purpose only, and which would allow quick and yet heavy impact blows, possibly mostly of an everyday working axe. War gloves would be used as a secondary form of weapon by the Irish Kerns, if they would not use the axe, as accounts describe Irish Kerns using such weapons for blunt impact damage to an opponent's helmet or any form of his armor. Javelins were highly used by the Irish Kerns, all the way into the 16th century, as identical to other Irish military units. Kerns would either use these on foot or on horseback in order to break enemy ranks, so that Irish infantry would follow soon after the javelins were thrown into the enemy lines. Irish Kerns would carry somewhere between 6 to 10 javelins into battle on horseback, but on foot, possibly less. Historical accounts tell of Irish Kerns using a mix of pikes in order to trap or even pin down enemy cavalry. However, very little information is known of how they would actually use these in battle, as historians believe this would be a weapon that was mostly used by the Irish men-at-arms and not the Kerns. Most commonly, Irish Kerns would take with them that of the bow and arrow. The bow would be used in the form of the rear ranks in order to allow volleys of arrows to be rained down on their opponents to open the enemy lines and break the enemy positions, or could also be used in a form of guerrilla warfare, which the Irish were perfect at when fighting against the Anglo-Irish and English. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more. If you have any ideas on what arms and armor we should cover next, or what military unit we should cover next, please let me know in the comments below. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Irish Kerns of the 13th century, and of what arms and armor you would wear as if you were dressed up as them yourself. Anyways guys, been Celtic Templar. Hope to see y'all in the next one. Like and subscribe for more to help the channel grow. Have a great day y'all.
Klotjara gorglat, vermodisidarnat, Opper klövat, du is pellitrat pan, klövat kat pan kurchen, goine thaune, kat pan kurchen.